Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne production. Now available on Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, I'm coming to Ventura, California. I'm at the Cold Steel headquarters talking to Lynn Thompson. And I always say on the podcast, every man's got to have a pocket knife. Every woman does too. And I'm here with the guy that makes them. And again, the name is Lynn Thompson. Lynn, I tell you what, I've gotten a whole tour of the facility here at Cold Steel Knives in Ventura, California. Y'all say that y'all make the strongest, sharpest, how's it go?
Strongest, sharpest knives.
Y'all make the strongest, sharpest knives, and that's what we're here to talk about that. But give me a little background on where you come from, where you're born, because I've done a lot of research, but I can't find out a whole lot about you. Did you grow up here in Ventura?
No, I was born in Fortaleza, Brazil, and I have dual citizenship. My parents were Americans, and they registered me with the American consulate when I was born. So I have a Brazilian birth certificate, and Brazil still considers me a citizen. I consider myself primarily American and a Brazilian second, but I love Brazil still and the Brazilian people.
Do you speak Portuguese?
I used to speak Portuguese. When we moved to this country, my English was broken, and we moved to Kalamazoo, Michigan from Brazil. And all those Dutch kids were really hard on us. And my parents, because we were having such a hard time in school, they stopped speaking Portuguese in the home so that we would assimilate quicker. And so I've lost my Portuguese. But my friends in Brazil say that if I come back for 3 months, I'll get my Portuguese back because it's the first language imprinted on my brain. So I don't have to learn it. I just have to remember it. Right. So someday I hope to do that.
Hey, man, I've always been a guy that's been a fan of pocket knives, and growing up back in the day, I just remember being in love with them, and I've always had one ever since. You started Cold Steel in or about 1980. Was it a fascination of blades from a young age? What brought you into this endeavor as far as something to do?
That's interesting you ask that because my interest in knives goes back to even 5 and 6 years old. I have pictures of me in Brazil holding hand-carved knives that my dad made me, playing with those at least 4 years old. So it goes all through my childhood. I used to play with a knife, and my whip was a belt. So I had a knife and a whip, and I carried those around when I was 5 and 6 years old. And it's interesting that, one time my mom had watched me on television, and I was at the Soldier of Fortune convention, and I was breaking pumpkins with the butt of our Tanto, with the skull-crushing pommel. And it was all over national TV, and my mom really didn't like that publicity. And my aunt was in the room, and she said, Myrtle, she said, would you leave that kid alone? Since I've known him, he's done nothing but play and act out with knives. So I guess it's in my blood.
Okay, so then you got over here. You ended up, where'd you say, in Michigan?
Yeah, Michigan.
Okay, so then how'd you end up there in Ventura, California?
My dad was a Baptist preacher, and he got called out here to Wilmington, California, and we moved from Kalamazoo to Wilmington, and then from Wilmington to Chico, and from Chico to the Bay Area, and then from the Bay Area to the Los Angeles area. Now,
dude, you got to dig the weather out here over Michigan.
I love the weather here. The only place I want to see snow is on television. Now, my wife, she's from the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So I've gone back there many times during the winter, and it's 15 to 20 degrees below zero, and I'm still wearing shorts. And I just love California.
Dude, when I showed up, I'm wearing a pair of shorts right now, and we used to travel all over, all over the United States, all over Canada, the coldest places in the United States, and all the guys was getting mad at me and said, dude, would you please put some long pants on? I'd have a jacket, but I just always wear shorts. Out here in SoCal, we got great weather, so I'm still wearing shorts and flip-flops when I can. So you're interested in blades and knives at an early age. Did you go to college? Did you get an education?
Yeah, I went to Master's College over in Valencia, and I got a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration.
And so then what about forming Cold Steel Knives? What makes you to say, this is what I'm going to do for a living? I'm making a company. I'm making the strongest, sharpest knives in the United States.
Well, I've been self-employed since I was a junior in college. I got my real estate license when I was a junior in college, and I sold real estate through my junior and senior year and did well. My senior year, I made more than any professor in our college, working part-time. And then after college, I started building custom homes and small tracts. And in the early 1980s, the interest rates went up to like 17.5%, 18%. No one was buying any of my stuff. And I'd always had this interest in knives, and I decided to start a knife company. Now, the catalyst for that was I also loved dogs, and I had a canine sentry dog business. And one day, two of my dogs got in a big fight, and I tried to separate them, and I got on the wrong end of a 90-pound Doberman. And I managed to get out of that situation without getting bit too bad. But if I'd had a knife on me, I would have finished it right there. So I got a well-known brand. The only thing really available back then was a Gerber Mark II. And I got 2 Gerber Mark IIs, and I started practicing with those. And eventually I broke them training with them, and I was really disappointed. And that was the catalyst for me to start Cold Steel, is coming from Brazil and spending time away 48 hours by Jeep from the nearest town. You can't get resupply lots of times. If your knife breaks, you're stuck. And I wanted to make a knife that didn't break, and that was the huge catalyst to start Cold Steel. That's what drove me, was to make knives that don't break, points that don't break off when you need them.
So, man, you guys do a lot of YouTube videos showing how tough your knives are, and going back to the locking systems, the triad lock. And y'all will hang these things in a structure and put weights on massive amounts of weights. And you'll use a knocking machine going against both sides of the blade to test the strength. How did you come up with these different testing methods to show how strong these knives are?
Well, I love my customers. You know, in the industry, I'm not known for being too fond of my competitors. I'll cooperate with my competitors well enough to fight for our common causes, but really they're my competitors. But my customers now, that's something else. I love my customers, and I love their fingers. I love my trigger finger. I spend an enormous amount of my time shooting and trying to become a world-class shot, and I really appreciate how delicate and vulnerable all my customers' fingers are. And I always say the most important thing on your folding knife is the lock, because the only thing between your precious fingers and that razor-sharp blade is that lock. And so Cold Steel has tried over the years to improve and improve and improve the lock strength and the reliability of our lock. So as I practice all the time with fighting knives and folding knives, we see the stresses they go under. And so I know that the blade can be beaten. I know that you can miss and hit things you don't intend and put shock and stress on that lock. So we do our tests to try to duplicate the stresses that we think our customers can encounter using our knives in ways they're not supposed to use them. If you only have one tool and you have a situation, you might push that tool beyond its intended use. And we think about that all the time. So on your knife, I know that, like for instance, we had a customer in France that drove his knife into a tree and was pushing on it, and the blade was captured like in a vise. And he weighed 225 pounds, and he was able finally to break the knife's lock. Well, he put all of his weight against that lock, and it was locked in place. Very unusual situation, but I think about all those things. So I make my knives to resist real unusual situations. When you're fighting with a knife and someone beats your blade, you don't want that blade to slam shut on your fingers. If you miss and you hit a concrete wall or a girder or the side of a car or something, you don't want that knife to turn and cut your fingers off. When you're using the knife in an emergency situation for a pry bar, a screwdriver, all the things we tell you not to do, there's a huge margin of safety that we try to build in to protect you. Now, any lock can be broken. Any knife lock can be overcome, but we try mightily to give you all the insurance we possibly can. So it's my desire to protect your fingers that drives us to do all these tests.
Hey, going back from the starting days of 1980, and, you know, man, I'm just a guy that loves to read about knives and always carry one. You're a guy that's highly knowledgeable. This is what you do for a living. Going back from 80 into now in 2015, how have the steels changed? What is the go-to steel? Because I hear all the numbers and the letters, but it doesn't really make sense to me. At one point you'll get a blade that's very hard. It will keep an edge, but it's hard to sharpen once you lose the edge. Or a knife that's soft, you can sharpen real easy, but it loses an edge. How do you go about choosing a steel for a particular knife?
Well, what we try to do when we pick a steel for a knife is look at the use of the knife. If you're going to have a hunting knife and you're going to use it for skinning, you don't want to have a knife that you have to stop and sharpen in the middle of skinning a moose. It'd be nice to have a knife that you could go all the way through. So we'll pick a steel that has a lot of edge retention and enough toughness so that you don't, when you're taking the head off and you're cutting around through the vertebrae of the neck and you're fiddling, I call it fiddling in there, trying to separate that head off, you don't snap your point off. So it's a fine balance there. But if you're having a knife that's more, let's say a boot knife, that its primary purpose is self-defense, it doesn't have to have great edge holding because you're not going to be using it for carving and whittling and skinning and all those other things in all likelihood. What it has to be, though, is tough. It needs to be sharp. It needs to hold its edge through the encounter and not turn or bend over on bone and stuff. But its main thing is it has to be tough and not break. So we try to match the steel to the job. But saying that, the advances in steel, one of the things that I think is the coolest is the powdered steels that we have today. Because finally, we can take all the elements of a great steel, mix them totally homogeneously, so they're all perfectly mixed, melt them, and when they come out, they're about as good as it can get. And that's a huge, huge advancement in knife making, is the powdered steels. The next thing, of course, is your heat treatment. We're very specific and very strict on our heat treatment, and we test every batch to make sure it's exact. So, but the advances in steel, the powdered steels and the laminated steels are really fantastic.
You guys got, you've been in business for all these years. As we sit here in your office is almost soundproof, and it's the secret room.
That's right.
And you built it that way. But there's some prototypes sitting on the far side of the table. I won't mention any of the names. But so when the prototypes are, and you're looking for coming up with a next year's batch of knives, what are you looking to accomplish? I mean, how do you say, okay, we need this blade, or there's a demand for this, or here's something we think people may like? How do you make the decisions of the knives that I see on the far end of the table?
It's interesting you ask that. A lot of the things come out of my library here, and we're in our conference room right now, and there's 2,600 books on here on knives and swords and guns, and I've read all of those. And I read a lot of fiction. S.M. Sterling is an author that I really like, and he has a series called Dies the Fire that's inspired a lot of things. Out of that came our buckler, our Italian longsword. Wilbur Smith, another famous author, writes a lot of African-based novels. From him came a knob carry, a sjambok, an assegai spear that we make. A lot of my interest in spears came from reading his books. And then a lot of it comes out of my training. Steve's been in my gymnasium, and out of that gymnasium comes all kinds of ideas. As I get interested in all different forms of edged weapons and blunt impact weapons and martial arts, I learn about all the history. And my interest in Western martial arts has been growing, and we've been working with different blunt impact weapons and lots of different Western swords and stuff that no one's making them. So I'm going to make them. And I'm hoping that my customers out there will appreciate some of my interests. The other thing I do is I try to look for gaps where, for instance, in the past, Bill Bagwell in the 1980s had a whole column in Soldier Fortune magazine, Battle Blades, I think it was called. And he pushed the Bowie knife really hard, article after article after article. And I noticed that there was a gap. There was this growing interest in Bowie knives, but there was just the Western Bowie, and that was out there. And so we came out with the Trailmaster Bowie, and it was a huge success, and I filled the gap. The same thing on the kukri. He was talking about kukris and kukris and kukris, and he built this demand for the kukri. And so because of my interest in martial arts and the kukri, I've had a kukri since I was a junior in college. One of my friends, Lois from India, gave it to me. It was a really beautiful handmade kukri. I came out with a kukri, and that was a huge success. So a lot of things come from my reading and my study, and a lot of them come from my training.
I understand the Bowie knife. What exactly is a kukri?
A kukri is a very unique weapon. They don't know exactly where the origins come from. Some people say it came from India. Some people say from Greece or Rome. It's got a kind of a downward curved blade that presents the edge at a really super angle for shearing. So whenever you hit with the sweet spot there, the edge is presented to the target in a way that forces it in and shears into the target better than almost anything. A good kukri can quite often equal or outcut a sword. In fact, I was in Seiki, Japan in 93, and the Aido Club there put on a demonstration for me at one of the factories, and I really appreciated that. And they did all this test cutting against bamboo and tatami mats, and then when they were done, I wanted to try my hand. Well, I asked them, can I use one of their swords? Well, they didn't want to give me one of their $8,000 swords to this gaijin, that might bend their sword, and I understood that. So we had a stainless steel kukri there, and I filmed this, and I duplicated all their cuts with a kukri. Now, I was younger then and really strong, and I can't say I have more technique now, but that kukri helped me tremendously. It was razor sharp, perfectly balanced, weight forward, and I was able to duplicate all their cuts, and it was a lot of fun, and they were shocked. And before you leave today, I'm going to make sure you're the proud owner of a kukri, Steve.
Hey, right now I'm carrying the Swift, badass knife that I really dig. Heartbreaking story. I was in the airport about 3 weeks ago, and I had the Swift with the black blade, and I was right there at damn security, and I'd forgot to put the damn knife in my suitcase, and there wasn't time to go do the mailback procedure, and it broke my heart to have to put that thing in the trash can. Thankfully, I have a replacement. I've also really enjoyed the tough light stuff because it's just such an easy light carry for travel. If on your person you're carrying every single day, and I know you carry multiple knives usually, what's your go-to blades that you love to carry?
Well, I'll show you. I never show everybody all my knives, but I carry 3 Vaquero. And there's a reason why. It's a 5.5-inch blade. It's got an acute point that's in the center of the handle, so it's very accurate for thrusting. The double curve catches and holds whatever it contacts and allows me to pull the edge through. It's serrated. The lock holds over 400 pounds. You can put it in our testing machine with 50 pounds of weight on a 3-foot arm and hit it 5 times on each side and it won't fold. So it's very, very shock resistant. And it's got multiple grip options. And I'm used to I have a bunch of them that I train with every day. And it's my go-to knife. It's widely unrecognized, but Sir Richard Burton said the S-curve knife is the optimum cut and thrust blade. When he wrote the Book of the Sword and he was describing a yatagan, my Vaquero is modeled after a yatagan blade. It's historically correct in its proportions and what it does, and it's very good for a cut and thrust blade. The point, I really like the point, is very acute, and it takes very little pressure to make it pierce. So that's why I'm so fond of it. It's super strong, it's reasonably lightweight, easy to conceal, and it has a lot of reach. You can choke clear to the back of the handle and just hold the last 2 inches, and there's finger cutouts there for your index and middle finger, and the end of the saw handle goes into your palm of your hand. So I can extend my reach 10 inches with this knife very easily. And I've used that a lot when I'm finishing off wounded game, especially stuff with sharp hooves and horns. I'll come up from behind and insert behind the shoulder or grab the horn if I can, or step on the neck and hold them down so I don't get the antler or the horn in my crotch or a hoof in the mouth, knock out my teeth. I've been kicked before when I was younger and more careless, and I can tell you, a white-tailed deer can kick you pretty darn hard.
You're listening to another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show, only on PodcastOne.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's simple. Go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
The Steve Austin Show. The Steve Austin Show.
All right, I'm coming to you from the Cold Steel headquarters talking to Lynn Thompson. When you're carrying, are you thinking primarily self-defense, or most of my stuff is cutting through a box, cutting through a letter, cutting through a rope, but it's for protection if need be. What's your primary reason of carry?
I carry primarily for self-defense. I carry a knife, usually a small knife that I do chores with, and all my other knives are dedicated for self-defense because your self-defense blade, you want it to be razor sharp, razor sharp. A good friend of mine that I trained for several years was attacked with a knife, and his attacker's knife was less than sharp. And he took 12 defensive cuts on his arm and shoulder before he could get his knife out. And his knife was razor sharp, a cold steel knife. It was a Spartan. He delivered one cut, and it was so devastating, it finished the guy right there on the spot. End of story. So your knife has to be razor sharp.
You say in your videos you run a martial company, you live a martial life, you make no apologies for it. Explain what you mean by you live a martial life.
Well, we believe in the warrior lifestyle here. The warrior, we believe, should be the pillar of the community, never the pillager. He should be the person the community looks up to. He has good morals, a good moral compass. He's kind, he's considerate, he's generous, he's hardworking, he's productive. And he also has the ability to defend his community, his family, his country, his town. And that's what built our country. Our forefathers were warriors. When our country called, we had no standing army. Ordinary citizens with their skill at arms that their fathers taught and that they learned in the militia, they came on and they took on the tyranny of England and freed our country. And we'd like to see every man be a warrior today. Every young man should be raised up to be a warrior because it's a very high standard and it's good. It's really, really good for our community.
Hey man, I was walking around with Andy, and I was showing me some of and watching your YouTube videos. I mean, you train in 5, 6, or 7 different martial arts disciplines. Go over some of the things that you're training in. I mean, because there's a bit of everything from Kali to knife to jiu-jitsu.
Right. All right, I'll give you my typical workout on the week. On Mondays, I train in kettlebells with Doug Nepodal, who's a very famous kettlebell trainer. And Doug has really, really helped me in the last 7 or 8 years I've been training with him. I train with him twice a week for an hour and a half to 2 hours.
What do you like about the kettlebells?
Well, the thing I liked about the kettlebell so much is it promotes core strength. There's not anything that you can do with a kettlebell that doesn't require you to engage your core, and it also balances both sides of your body. You'll notice when you lift weights that quite often one side is stronger than the other. Well, the kettlebells will balance you out. My left side, which is my weaker side, is probably 80-85% of my right, which is unusual. So it's really given me a lot of strength in my left side of my body and tremendous core strength. Now, I'm not thin, as you can see, but I'm really strong.
What are the other disciplines?
Okay, so on Tuesdays, I train with Guru Ron Balicki, and the first 45 to 50 minutes, we do kickboxing, or we'll do Kali, or we'll do Savat. It changes.
And Kali would be stick fighting?
Kali is all of the Filipino martial arts. So it's primarily, I do sword fighting, and I'll do machete and dagger, sword and bowie knife, cutlass and bowie. The stick is really a training tool for the sword. The Filipinos used the stick to train with because the sword was so dangerous to train with. So it's really just a training arm. It's not really the ultimate weapon. And that's why when people talk about stick fighting, to me it's just a training mechanism for a sword. So I'll do that. And then in the shoot fighting, years ago in 1988, I saw Jorge and Gracie on like a film. It was like a video of him fighting different karate people and stuff and taking them down and submitting them. And I thought to myself, I was with the late Ernie Frankel's house, and I said, I can't do that. I don't have that skill. So in 1996, I finally got the opportunity to start training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And from there in 1999, I started training with Guru Ron Balicki in shoot fighting, which is more wrestling-based and probably not quite as much emphasis on submissions as it is getting a superior position and knocking people out, punching them out, which appeals to me a little bit more than jiu-jitsu. So I would say my grappling game is more shoot fighting. But lately I've been training with Joey Olaski, and I've been doing a lot more combat wrestling too. So I'm trying to learn. I have this huge lust for knowledge, and maybe I'm not have the natural abilities of other people, but I usually get there by tenacity. I never quit training. I never quit trying. So I'll train in that, and then on Wednesday I go shooting. I go to my shooting range in Piru, and I shoot for 3 or 4 hours. On Thursday, I do knife fighting, usually with Guran Bliki, and I start out with a 3 or 3.5 inch blade, because you have to get used to using small knives, because you may be in a country where that's all you can have. And there's a huge learning gap in using a small knife. It's much more difficult. You have to learn how to use the point, and you have to learn how to use footwork more, and you have to use more angles to get around your bigger opponent's blade. And then I'll go to the 5.5 inch vaquero, then I'll go to usually a 7.5 inch fighter, and then I'll finish with a Bowie knife and a kukri. And then in the afternoon, Luc LaFontaine comes, and I go through Japanese sword fighting. And I primarily use Masashi's two-sword method with him. And I've been training with Luke for maybe 10 or 11 years now. And we'll train for 2 hours. And then on Friday morning, I train with Doug again for 1.5 hours to 2 hours. And in the afternoon, I train with Professor Anthony DeLonges and Luke in Western sword fighting. So I'll start out with usually a civilian saber. Then I'll use a small sword. I'll use a rapier and dagger. I'll use a Western saber, a full-size saber. And I'll usually finish with cutlass and Bowie knife. And quite often then I'll also do just Bowie knives against sabers. On Saturday morning, I usually come in and I ride my bike, and every 5 minutes I have a circuit. I hit, slap, punch, or elbow either heavy bags, or I call them my Bob doll, or I'll use my Wing Chun dummy.
Dude, do you ever take a break?
Sundays, I usually don't train except after church I go shooting. So I try to shoot twice a week.
With all your interest in martial arts, are you a UFC fan?
Big UFC fan.
You get all the pay-per-views. I watch everything they do. And Josh Barnett, obviously, is a good friend of yours. He helped turn me on to cold steel knives.
Yeah, Josh is a great guy. We're so proud of his last fight. He fought a very, very smart fight, and we had the fight at my house, and we were all cheering. So it was after our cold steel challenge, and I had a bunch of people over, and we all stayed and watched his fight. So it was a really great day.
Hey, man, and watch some of your stuff on YouTube, your shooting videos. I'm a big fan of shooting, do a lot of hunting. And it turns out you're going to go hunting this year down in Tilden, Texas. And we were just having this conversation before we started rolling sound and recording this thing, and I said, I can't believe it. I said, that's where my ranch is. And so you'll be only a couple of miles down from me, so we got to hook up when you get down to South Texas. How long have you been hunting the South Texas area? Because I know, with looking around, you've gone to Africa many times, a lot of big game stuff here. When did you start hunting?
I started hunting when I was 12 years old. And my dad grew up on a farm on the border of Canada and Minnesota in International Falls. And he hunted all of his life, and he passed that tradition on to us, my brothers and I. So I've been hunting a lot when I was a kid. And then about 1984, 85, I got the opportunity to start hunting in California a lot. And I went up to Paso Robles, and I got to hunt a lot there. And I have done most of my hunting adventures outside the country because I can take more than one animal. You know, when you go deer hunting here, there's a limit. You shoot one deer, and I go to Africa in 30 days. I can take 20, 30 different animals and have lots of different experiences. But I started hunting in Texas with my friend Buck. The last Christmas was the first year I hunted in Texas.
What did you think about that?
Buck always calls it the jungle there in South Texas, and it is the jungle. I went into that thorn bush, and it was really, really thick and hard to get around it. And it was thicker than most places I've been in Africa. So I have a lot of respect for people that hunt in South Texas. That's some hard country.
And that's one thing about South Texas, and that's right in the Golden Triangle region where everything that grows is protein. But that being said, everything that grows will cut you, stick you, hurt you because it's got a thorn on it.
Or bite you, the snake on the ground.
Oh, dude, man, have your snake boots on half the time because of the weather. I'm hunting in tennis shoes, but all of a sudden if I'm looking for something, I'm also looking for rattlesnakes because I want to get my ass bit. I'm looking forward to seeing you down there in South Texas. You better give me a call when you come down.
Definitely will.
Hey, check it out, man. We're sitting in your office, and you've got, through your travels, and you've been doing this for so long, and overseas, a lot of stuff from Africa, you've got an incredible collection of walking sticks, and things are just works of art. They're absolutely beautiful, but they're also weapons. Man, how long did it take you to amass that collection? I would imagine there's probably 100, maybe 100 or more sticks over there.
I've been collecting walking sticks from 1990, probably 89, 1990. And I have probably the best collection of Zulu knob carries in the United States. And I've put my life on the line, literally, to go up into the hills in Zululand and collect these. I remember in the early 2000s, in Weenan, I hired 2 local police sergeants with FNFALs to accompany us, because we're going to go buy knob carries up in the hills in Zululand. And there was lots of inter-clan rivalry and strife and brigandee going on there, lots of bandits and holdups, and we saw lots of gas stations in that area that had been closed for violence and because they'd been robbed so much, and lots of businesses were closed, and it was pretty hairy. So I hired these 2 guys, and they went with me one day. And the next day they said, "Mr. Thompson, we're not coming." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Those people will kill you up there." So I went with my friend Moses, who was a clan leader, if you will, and had a big following. And his reputation was so big that no one really wanted to incur his wrath. So we were able to go around to the different small villages and buy knob carries without actually being attacked. But we did get caught one day in a kind of a roadblock where I saw their guns, they saw my guns, and it was kind of a stalemate, and everyone decided to leave. But I did tell the driver he was going to be the first to go because his passengers all had AKs. So I was in the back, and I had a Ruger 454 7.5-inch Red Hawk, and I said, "I'm going to shoot you first." So he was motivated to leave because he knew he was going to get it. And so we went all through these hills and collected these knob carries. And I've been doing that. It took me maybe 12 years to get the collection I have, 12 different trips there.
When you're over there and you purchase a knob carrier or trade for one, now I would only guess that these things are highly valuable, but they're when you're picking these things up, I mean, what would you expect to pay for one? Because over there, I would imagine they're a much better bargain.
Yeah, they were a bargain, I have to say, but they're precious to these individuals because it's their own personal stick. They might have carried this stick for 10, 11 years. Most of mine are made out of wild olive, and wild olive takes enormous long time for that tree to grow, and so they very carefully pick the sapling or the branch, and they'll straighten it, and they'll take the bark off it, and they'll cure it, and they'll polish it, and usually there's a knot at one end, and they might plane that knot off to make different angled surfaces that are quite common in a knob carry in Zululand. And it's their personal weapon. It's also their walking stick. They don't leave. A Zulu man normally won't leave his house without one. He'll take it in when he goes out to herd his cattle or on any errand or when he goes to town. It's his constant companion. It's really his sign of manhood and virility. I mean, if he's got his stick with him, he's a power, and you're going to have to treat him with respect or you're going to get the consequences. So I usually pay $20 to $30 for them, which is, in Rand, a lot of money.
Yeah, but I mean, here, those things would go at a king's ransom.
Yes.
Those things, again, and I was thinking, I didn't know what kind of wood they were made out of. I was thinking ironwood because just how tough and how heavy they were. But you said it's olive?
Yeah, wild olive. And olive is very hard and relatively heavy, and it's resilient as well. So it's probably harder than hickory, but it also has tremendous resistance to breaking and can take impact well. And it's a tremendously good wood for that. Now, they also use quite often sickle bush, which is a thorn tree that's very tough, and they'll dig that up, and they'll use the root ball at the bottom. So there's 2 or 3 different favorite woods. They'll use pink ivory and lots of other hardwoods, but most of my collection are from the Weenan area and Zululand, and they're wild olive.
How did you come about the idea, obviously, because you're a fan of the walking stick for obvious reasons, to walk, but to be a companion and for protection. You employed some of these designs that you have personally collected into the cold steel walking stick lines and using, what's the material you use?
We use polypropylene, virgin polypropylene, and what I always struggle with a wood stick is cross grain. And whenever you're using a piece of wood, it can break at you at the most inopportune moment. And polypropylene is highly, highly resistant to shock and breaking. Now, you can fatigue it. You can bend it back and forth over a right angle edge a number of times, fatigue the material, and eventually break it that way. But barring that, you'll battle. You'll struggle mightily to break it hitting anything with it. You could hit a tire with it till your arms fall off, and you'll never begin to break one of our polypropylene walking sticks. And yes, I have used some of the sticks out of my own collection. Our blackthorn walking stick is modeled exactly after one of my collection. And because I have that huge interest in walking sticks, we imported in the 90s blackthorn sticks from Ireland, and I would bring in 5,000 sticks at a time. And I would sort through them and keep the best for our customers and send the rest back to the importer. This gal in Kansas brought them all in, and she would send them to me. I would sort through them, keep the ones I wanted that I thought were the best, and send the rest back, and she'd sell them to other people that didn't know or care as much as I did. And my customers got some really, really choice sticks. And for myself, I guess I'm a little selfish, but I kept the cream de la cream of all of them. And I use that to model my blackthorn stick after it. And we also have made knob carry, our African walking stick, modeled after one of my collection. And you're going to see more from that. I'm going to make another knob carry in the future out of polypropylene.
Man, there's also a lot of swords going around here, and these are swords that you've collected as well. And it's very interesting because Andy was showing me around earlier, and I was thinking, okay, that there was just a point on one end. Well, I didn't know that was the practice end, and the other end was the business end with, it was a two-blade.
A spear, our Samburu spear.
Yeah.
Or like I have a Maasai spear collection here. I call this my spear forest. On the floor here, I have a bunch of kudu horns on a beautiful wood base. And in there I have Maasai spears that I collected in Tanzania. I bought quite a few on my trip there in '99. I bought a lot of them from actual Maasai warriors and bought their spears and brought them back here. And, yeah, the bottom end, or the shoe we call it, is used for practice so you don't wreck the point and the edge.
Right.
So, and also it's what you stick in the ground, like whenever they're outside their home, particularly the Samburu. When a Samburu warrior's home, he sticks his spear outside of his hut. And that's a sign to everybody, hey, I'm here.
Okay, now in collecting, the walking sticks, the swords, everything that you've done, just going over, that sounds like a very interesting endeavor in and of itself, with the environment being what it is, as you just described. But also in some of the hunting videos on your YouTube thing, dude, you've got a sword in each hand, you're crouched down, you're walking through the jungle, you're hunting with a spear. Sounds like it's a real dangerous endeavor, is it not?
It is.
Especially when you're throwing a spear at a Cape buffalo, one of the toughest animals on planet Earth.
Yeah. I read a book in the 80s. Forget the name of the author right now. He's got a whole series of books, and he talks about killing a buffalo with a spear, and I always thought that would be cool to do and really a macho thing to do and a real challenge. And so I endeavored to do that. I've killed now 2 Cape buffalo with a spear and 2 Asian buffalo with a spear. Actually, 3 now Cape buffalo. I just killed another one in Africa this summer. So it is a dangerous thing to do. But I'll tell you, Steve, one of the things that made me brave is the Super Red Hawk Ruger 454 Casull revolver. You'll see in my videos, I say, this revolver made me brave. Up until that time, it was even more scary because you can't really carry a rifle in your left hand and throw the spear because it wrecks your balance. And a single-action pistol is pretty slow. Now, my favorite Freedom Arms single actions, my hand is not as big as yours, and it's a long reach for my thumb to get that hammer with one hand, pull the hammer back, and fire it. I can't do that as quick as I'd like to. But the double-action Ruger Super Red Hawk gave me that double-action capability to respond instantly to a charge, and it made me a lot braver. It made me willing to risk my life to try to kill dangerous animals with a spear because I now have that margin of safety. Now, I'm not saying it's for everyone. It took me a long time of practice to work up to be able to shoot a 454 double action really accurately under pressure. But it's a skill that you can aspire to and that you can get. So it's not for everybody, but it's really exciting, and I really enjoy it.
How often do you practice your spear throwing? Because one of your videos, you've got a big set of hay bales out there, and you're constantly throwing. Is this something that you do on a everyday basis or once a week basis with everything else that you employ?
Well, I used to throw every day for years, and I'm telling you, that will wreck your arm. You're going to wear your arm out. You're going to have shoulder problems. Your arm's good. You're going to have tendinitis in your elbow and stuff. I don't recommend that. I recommend throwing twice a week. And if you do want to throw every day, you only throw maybe 10 or 12 times. Now, that spear that I throw weighs 2.2 pounds. And I throw it really hard because I'm trying to drive it through the rib cage of big animals. So I'll throw it maybe 10 or 12 times, and I'll walk away from it. Or if I'm going to throw it just twice a week, I'll throw it maximum maybe 30 times. And that's it. Now, when you're throwing from an elevated position, you think that you can throw it more because you're not using as much muscle, but what you're doing is you're really using your arm a lot more than you think because you can't get your body weight into it. If you try to put your body weight into it from a tree stand or something, you're going to creak as you load with your legs. Anybody who knows anything, your power starts with your legs, then it comes up through your trunk, then it comes out through your shoulder, arm, wrist, fingers. That's your power chain, right? So as you dig in with your feet, that animal's going to hear that. You can't make those kind of noises, so it's all arm power. So I learned that also the hard way. So I only throw from the elevated position 20 or 30 times too now. So it's not as much as you think, but it's regular. And I want to encourage you to throw, everyone that's interested in shooting a bow or shooting a pistol or anything, if you throw a spear regularly, your eye-hand coordination will go up off the hook. You'll be able to throw anything because God made us to make those calculations in our subconscious on when to release the spear, how far to hold over, how hard to throw. All those things are done in your subconscious. That math is done and translated miraculously through our body, and that's how that throw is accomplished. So throwing a spear, if you have any interest in sports, anything that you do with your hands or arms, any swinging, hitting, play tennis, anything like that, spear throwing will just help you.
Hey, man, a lot of your stuff over at the shooting range, and you invited me to go shooting with you after this interview today, but I got to back to Los Angeles because I'm trying to gear down before I can head to Texas. So I appreciate the invite. Dude, I'm a Glock guy. I know you like the Glock. Obviously, you love
I'm a Glockaholic.
Glockaholic. But you love the Red Hawk. But, dude, one of the things that was impressive, I think it was your wife in the background calling the shots. You were high. But you're shooting that distance with an open sight Ruger Red Hawk at, man, it was 100 yards?
50 yards.
50 yards.
But I'm shooting at a 3-inch bull, so when she says I'm high, I was 2 inches high. But my wife, she expects me to hit that bullseye every time, so she's pretty hard.
Dude, how long did it take you to get that proficient with just open sight? Because I ain't worth a damn with the damn open sight at that distance. And 50 yards. And your furthest kill with a pistol, I think it was, I think you said on video, like 150 meters?
158 meters.
Yes. That's a long way, dude.
What I do is I practice in real specific ways. We shoot at my range. I primarily shoot at a 2-inch target. And at 28 yards, if you can hit a 2-inch target with iron sights, 7 out of 7, 6 out of 7 times, usually with a 3-7 Magnum, I'll shoot at that, or a golf ball. So, if you watch my videos, I talk about Mark Baker saying, aim small, miss ball. Well, that really is true. You got to shoot at really, really small targets and concentrate. Your concentration has to be off the hook, and you have to talk to yourself as you shoot. I always talk to myself. I'm telling myself to watch that front sight all the way through the trigger pull, all the way through and through the recoil. Concentrate on that front sight. Don't let my hands move. Take all the shake out. So there's it's a huge mental discipline. The thing I love about shooting is it drives all the stress from your everyday life and your work life out of your mind because you cannot shoot well and think about anything else. It's a huge effort of concentration. And I say on my videos, if you want to be awesome, you need to get an understudy. I'd get a Ruger Mark II 22 or Smith & Wesson 22 revolver, and you practice with that. When I start teaching people how to shoot, we start at 5 feet away. and I go back in 5 feet increments. And I say on my video, I can teach almost anybody in a half an hour to be really lethal with the 38 special out to about 20, 30 feet very quickly. And you want to have really good positive reinforcement. But shooting at small targets, that translates into that accuracy at long range.
Man, you've hunted all over the world. You're about to go down to South Texas on my ranch. Man, if back in the days, I was a 7 mag guy, and I built a 300 Win mag and the Ultra mag. But man, just in the last few years, I built an AR-10 as a hog gun, and then I just fell in love with the way I was thumping those hogs. So I just turned into the biggest 308 bolt guy in the world, and so I just love that caliber. Coming down to South Texas here in the next month, what caliber will you be carrying and why?
Well, I'm going to be hunting with a spear, so I'll bring a 454 Ruger Super Red Hawk, and I also like double rifles really well. So I'm probably going to bring my 500 Heim, because a lot of people never get a chance to shoot their doubles. They think you only have to shoot them against buffalo or elephants or stuff like that. But I shoot mine at everything, because it's the trigger time that's important. So I'll probably, last year I had a custom Heim 7.62 by 54R made. That's a Russian bolt gun caliber from World War II and World War I. And the reason I had that made was it has a rim. So it's like a 30-06 with a rim. And the ammo is really inexpensive compared to ammo that's normally used in a double rifle. So I can shoot it a lot. And it's like having a rim 30-06. So I took that last year. And this year I'm probably going to take a 500 and my bow and my pistol.
Okay, now you shooting a recurve, you shooting a compound? Tell me about, because I imagine it's primitive.
I shoot a Matthews Monster bow and Victory arrows. And I wanted to be like Tim Wells. When I first met him, when I first saw his videos, I thought, wow, that guy is awesome. And I started supporting his TV show with advertising just because I so admired his skill with the bow. And then as I got to know him and saw him shoot in real life, in real time, he could do stuff with a bow that I can't even describe. It's just that he's just that talented. And I thought, I want to be like that. And I started practicing, and you know what I found out? There's not enough years left. So I switched to a compound bow with a release. And because I shoot a pistol so much, I found that I can shoot a compound bow pretty darn good with not a lot of practice. But one thing I really learned is the long time it takes from the time that you hit your release, that arrow clears the rest and gets on target. You've got to keep your left arm, your bow arm, straight and steady and not move it at all. And most of my bad shots are because I violate that rule, and that's one thing that I'm really working on. It's not as easy as you think. Even with a compound bow, it's not as easy as shooting. I don't think shooting a revolver. Shooting a bow is really hard, but it's a challenge. And to me, shooting a rifle is pretty flippin' easy now. So I'm really down to spears and bows now.
I agree with you as far as it is kind of easy. The technology's come a long way, and it's been a long way for a long time. But I'm not going to mention the name of the ranch you're going to be hunting on, but with your friend that you're going down there with, does he know that you're coming down to hunt? Are you going to hunt the white-tailed deer with a spear, or is that for the hogs? What are you looking to kill down there?
Primarily, I'll hunt the hogs with the hogs with the spear, and the white-tailed deer I'll hunt with the bow, and the turkeys I'll hunt with a bow. So if I get a chance at coyotes, I'll shoot them with a bow. My wife and I are involved with the Relentless Pursuit television show, so I'm trying to get as much footage for the show with bow hunting as we can get.
Hey, man, with the bad weather that was down in Texas recently with the big storm that blew in, I started watching the Weather Channel. Well, I happened upon a show. It was called Fat Guys in the Woods. And I saw, man, all of a sudden at the creek, the guide, he busts out a knife. And I said, man, dude, that's a cold steel knife. How long have you guys been associated with that show?
A couple years now.
It's a good show.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a good show. I like the fact that people getting out there and experiencing the outdoors and trying to make it out there. The only thing I don't like about the show is I know a lot of guys that aren't skinny that are awesome outdoorsmen too. So I think that sometimes people think that guys that don't have 32-inch waists aren't viable, and I've learned an awful lot of outdoors tricks and hunting tricks and all kinds of experiences from guys you'd never call skinny.
Yeah, to me, it was just about getting the guys out in the woods, and all of a sudden, they had to depend on themselves. And, Creek would give them a set of rules, and they had to go out and get something accomplished. It's basically not a fish out of water. It was fish out of water, but obviously a confidence builder and the fact that they had to put their minds and bodies to the test.
Absolutely. A lot of fun to watch it.
Hey, man, have you read all of these books in this room? Because I think you said a while ago there's 2,600 books in here.
Yeah, I've read them all. One of my advantages in life is I'm a voracious reader. And sometimes people will say I'm arrogant. I'm not arrogant. I know. I've read about it. I've read people that have actually done it, or I've interviewed them, or I've done it myself. And a lot of my knowledge comes from reading books. I've read over 10,000 books. And God's blessed me with a lot of retention. I'm not good at math.
Dude, I ain't got no retention. Yeah, I'm okay with the basic 4, but I ain't got no retention.
I can read really fast, and I test in the high 90% in retention. So that's a huge gift that God gave me. And it's helped me a lot in my business, helped me get through school because I worked my way through college. And if I didn't have that ability to read quickly and retain, I could have never gotten through college because I didn't have enough time to study.
One book that I did read that I have to recommend to you, and I bet you've already read it, Death in the Long Grass by Peter Capstick Hathaway.
Yes, I read all of his books. That's who I wanted to talk about earlier. Capstick was the one that talked about he made a spear with a thornwood shaft, and he'd killed a buffalo with that. And his gun bearer, Silent, carries an assegai and cuts a mamba in half in mid-strike and all this stuff. I don't know if it's all true, but he's an awesome writer, and it was really entertaining.
Hey, there's one picture I want to describe your whole compound here, but just from reading Death in the Long Grass, a wounded jaguar, a wounded leopard is bad news, especially when you got to go in the long grass and go after it. There's a picture of a leopard in there, and I think you went in there with a knife in your teeth and some kind of sidearm. And what was that like? Well, because a big cat can do a lot of damage.
I'm very frightened of lions and leopards. I'm not really frightened by an elephant or a buffalo or any other the dangerous animals in Africa.
With respect to the fact that the elephant can crush you like an ant?
Yeah. The thing is I know where to shoot that elephant.
Right.
And he's slow enough that I can shoot him. The lion and the leopard is so quick. A lion covers 100 yards in 4 seconds. He can jump. A big lion can jump 20 to 25 feet in one leap. So he can leap on you from 25 feet away. His teeth, and I love lions. I've been to lots of lion ranches. I've hunted lion all over Africa. I'm a huge admirer of lions and leopards and tigers. But a lion's tooth, his incisors, are bigger than your thumb at the base. They're over 3 inches long. That lion can kill you with one bite. He can break the neck. A big lion, a 500-pound lion, a big male, can hit a buffalo in the neck with his paw so hard to break his neck. Now, a buffalo's neck is more than 3 feet around. It's huge. It's a huge pillar of muscle and bone. That's how strong a lion is. His pecs are sometimes 13 to 14 inches deep. That's how big his front of his pecs are on a lion. So I'm really frightened of a lion. And going after those when they're wounded is really hair-raising. Now, when I shot that leopard that you're talking about, it was in Zambia, dusk, and the PH said, I missed. I said, I don't miss a leopard at 35 yards with a 300 Win Mag. Doesn't happen. But he jumped straight up and out of the tree without a sound, which is very uncharacteristic for a shot leopard. So we went and looked for him, and we went out 20 yards, no blood. 30 yards, no blood. 40 yards, no blood. Now it's dark. The cameraman said, Lynn, do I have to continue? And I said, no. I said, you're not trained as a fighter. You're not trained to do this. I said, I have a little experience fighting. I'm going to fight. If we come on this leopard in this dark, in this area, we're going to be fighting for our lives. So, Mark, no, you go back and wait in the truck. So the cameraman bowed out, and I don't blame him. And I had several knives with me. I gave the scout an OSS, which has already been used to kill a buffalo. So I knew that knife would do him good if he had to go mano a mano with that leopard. I took another one, put it in my left hand. I got rid of my rifle because I knew that we'd be fighting at close range in the dark. I took my .454 and off we went. And It took us 45 minutes to go 100 yards. I mean, we were just creeping through that, absolutely frightened. My teeth were shaking.
Yeah.
You know, and I found myself, and I very seldom will admit this, I found myself even edging in. You know, you want to get under the wing of the guy next to you. So I was getting a little close to the PH, and you say, "Hey, Lynn, get back in your vector." So I didn't even know I was doing that. That's
and
what
by
you're
PH,
at.
you mean pro hunter.
Yeah, my professional hunter.
Yeah.
And so we kept approaching, and we finally found blood, and then we were shit scared because now we know he's been hit. So now think we have a wounded leopard. And we went another 40 minutes, and all of a sudden the game scout said, "There he is!" And in front of us, maybe 40 yards away again, on a stone bottom of the creek bed that was empty, there was that leopard laying there, dead. And when we approached him, it found out that I'd shot him straight through the heart. And the bullet went all the way through. He bled internally. There was almost no blood on the outside. There was almost no blood trail. He ran flat out, shot through the heart till he just bled out and died. And if you look at the pictures of me, I'm holding that leopard up. There's a huge smile on my face. I just got down on my knees and thanked God right there on the spot for our safety, because that could have gone really bad. And Guy Rowe, the PH that was with me, had within the last 4 years gone up on a leopard follow-up like that, where the leopard charged and he speared him in midair, and by the grace of God, he shot him with a .458 CZ double over and under rifle, an unusual rifle. But he shot him, he speared him in the face as it sprang on him, and he hit him in the eye and killed him outright. But so he had experience of it really going bad, and it could have been really bad. So it was very exciting, and got all our blood roaring through our veins, but I was really relieved when it turned out so well. So I've got to go now on follow-ups on dangerous game, maybe 12, 14 times, and it's an experience.
Got to ask you, man. You're talking about the lions, you're talking about the leopards, and recent, a couple of months ago, dude went over there and shot Cecil the lion. I got to get your thoughts on that because, man, I'm a hunter. I'm an outdoorsman. Obviously, you are. I saw that lion. I said, man, I guess they baited him off the preserve, whatever you call it. And, man, that damn thing was just too pretty to damn shoot. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, at first I was appalled like everybody else. And then when I went to Africa this summer, I got more and more facts. And PETA has spun this a lot. The anti-hunting crowd, the anti-gun crowd has really spun this. Now, the real villain in this case was the professional hunter. The professional hunter didn't have permission to hunt on that hunting block that was adjacent to the park. So he took his client in where he wasn't supposed to go. They called or baited that line. The line came a half a mile outside of the boundary of that park. So the line traveled outside the park. They see this big line. It's in dusk. They shoot it. Now, it's wearing a radio collar. Well, if you know anything about big lines, they got a big mane. And in the dusk, I'm not saying I know, it may have been difficult or impossible to see that lion was wearing a collar. Now, myself, I would never shoot. I love lions. And the last thing in the world I'd ever want to do is shoot something that's endangered or protected in some way. So I would never shoot anything that was wearing a radio collar. But it happened. And this dentist has been vilified for this as if he killed somebody. Now, yeah, is it a tragedy? Is it bad? Is it sad? Yes, all those things are true. But to threaten this guy's life for shooting a lion, I think that's over the top. And again, the guy that really screwed up on this, when you're hunting and the PH says shoot it, you shoot it because you don't know. I don't know where, if you're over there and you're the client, you don't know where that park is. It's not like someone sits down there and they tell you, okay, Lynn, we're going to be hunting right on the boundary of this park today, and here's our goal. They don't tell you any of that stuff.
Gotcha. He's a professional hunter.
Yes, that guy's job is to get you a lion and get paid.
And have a high level of integrity, hopefully.
Yes, you're trusting him. He has a fiduciary duty to to protect you and to keep you from doing something wrong. He's the expert. You've hired at great expense. That guy probably paid $20,000 or $30,000 for that lion hunt. Don't you think he expects and is entitled to protection from doing something like that? I think he was, when you're paying that kind of money. So I can't entirely blame the hunter, but I do blame the PH. He shouldn't have been there, and he knew it. And we all know you don't go trespassing on other people's property. That's 101. That's why they say good walls and good fences make good neighbors. And when you're hunting in South Texas, you don't go cross over your neighbor's fence and go on there and hunt because there's some whitetail hanging out in that thicket. You just don't do it.
You don't.
And you don't do it in Africa either. But does the guy deserve to be threatened to be killed all the time? I say no. Neither his family is involved, so that's over the top.
Before we wrap this thing up, what's the craziest thing that ever happened to you over there? Because, with the adrenaline rush, all the things that you've been able to encounter over there, what's the craziest thing that ever happened to you? You think, holy hell, maybe I'm not coming back?
Well, I would have to probably say the craziest thing was the buffalo charge in Australia, because it happened so fast that the adrenaline really didn't kick in until it was over. And I wish I wouldn't have sworn, but I was I'm not humble, unfortunately. So I was a little proud of my shooting that day, that I saved my life. But that was probably the craziest thing, because I could have easily gotten killed there. If I had gone backwards in that buffalo charge, he would have caught me. I could never have gone backwards fast enough for him to get away from him coming forward. And from my training, especially in Filipino martial arts, we're taught you dissipate forward pressure by lateral movement. So you move in a circle or laterally. So I knew also that I had to have time to clear that long barrel from my holster. And if you look at my videos, when I'm talking about big bore handguns, years before this encounter, I talked about how you have to pull your long barrel pistol up high enough to clear the holster so it doesn't snag. So I knew that. I moved laterally, cleared the holster. As soon as I cleared the holster, I spun. And at the first shot, he was only 3 feet off my muzzle. And I kept backing up shooting. Unfortunately, the cameraman lost his mud and didn't capture everything because he bobbled the camera a little bit. But you could see most of what happened. And I just kept up back. In the first shot, I brained him. And I kept shooting. Now, I don't remember the first 2 shots. I didn't come back until the 3rd, 4th, 5th shot. But the first 2 shots, I can't remember at all.
So it was pure instinct. Was that the Cape Buffalo where the spear hit the horn?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was scary.
So that was probably...
That's a come-to-Jesus moment if there ever was one. A lot of people don't understand what a Cape Buffalo is. Quite simply, it's one of the most dangerous animals over there. Is it not?
Yeah. Every year, and this one was an Asian buffalo, but every year Asian buffalo kill people in Australia regularly. They steamroll you. They just run right over the top of you, or they hook you with the horn, toss you in the air, come back and hook you again. And they can overturn another 2,000 pound. If they slip when they're fighting, they slip to the flank around their opponent and get their horn underneath their body. They can pick 2,000 pounds up with their neck and toss them like you would a child. So they're really dangerous. A real dangerous animal. And this one here, I've been pushing him, and he'd had enough of me. He said, "Nah, I'm done with you, pal. I'm going to sort you out."
Hey, so any plans to go back overseas to hunt over to Africa?
Not this year. This next year, my big hunt is in Alaska, spears for brown bears. So we're going to try to take brown bears with spears.
Well, that's going to be interesting.
October 2016.
And as you do this, are you going to do the same thing with the Asian buffalo, or with the leopard? You're your own backup, or are you going to have a PH?
Well, the PH is seldom in the right spot to help you. I had a PH in Australia, but he was over 40 yards away at an angle he couldn't possibly shoot at. There was nothing he could do to save me.
So Red Hawk.
When you're hunting with a spear, you're your own backup.
Right.
Because no one else is going to be in. You're getting so close, you can't make that much noise. No one else can go with you. You're just too close. And you have to be that silent. If you look at Tim Wells when he spears, he always takes his shoes off. But you know what you don't know is sometimes he gets a thorn or a bruise in his foot. Like last time in Australia, he got stabbed so bad in the foot he couldn't hunt for 3 days. I'm usually not willing to risk that. My feet are too tender probably to take that. But you have to be super, super, super quiet when you're hunting with a spear. And you won't usually have the luxury of anybody else. Even the cameraman can't come up
Right.
So what we're planning on doing is getting above the bears and letting them come past us. And then if they do charge, they have to come uphill at us and give me a chance to employ my revolver.
Let me know how that goes.
Yeah.
I'm going to see you in South Texas in a couple of weeks. Moving into the future and bringing this thing back to cold steel knives, the strongest, sharpest knives in the world. These prototypes, I love the. Can I call the Lone Star the Lone Star?
Yeah.
I love that thing. When are these things going to come out and be available?
Almost all the things you're seeing here are slated for 2016. Some will be in January, and some will be coming in up to May.
You guys going to go to the SHOT Show?
Yeah, we'll be there.
Are y'all there every year?
No, we just usually walk the show. Our main show is the NRA show.
Okay, yeah, I was at the NRA show in Houston a couple of years ago. I haven't seen you guys at SHOT Show. That's a show that I always go to. And, man, with the stuff, the factory here, the world headquarters being right here, I'm just very impressed with everything. I love my knives. I think, man, you guys make a great presence there.
Thanks for that. The main thing is the NRA show is those are my people.
Right, I get you.
And we really ride for the NRA because without that Second Amendment, none of our rights are rights at all. So when I'm considering a politician, the only thing I ever think about is where does he stand on the Second Amendment, and I don't care about anything else. That's the first thing that comes up.
Hey, one last thing before we go. A lot of pictures out there. You guys are really tied in with the local police force. And I think your brother was a police officer, and you guys help with dogs.
Yes, we're really involved in our sheriff's department and our police department here because the sheriff and the police, they're the thin line that stands between you and evil. And I really want to encourage all of the viewers and listeners out there to show support to their law enforcement personnel in their towns because they're doing a thankless job under very trying circumstances. And one of the things that we're really interested in is in police dogs. I started with my own Sentry Dog business in the early 1980s, and my brother was the first sheriff's deputy in Ventura County to get a police dog, and his dog won the California State Championship. Here is a novice handler in a newbie county that's never had a police dog wins the entire state championship. His dog Falk won, and he's got this giant trophy. So I'm really proud of my brother's police career. He was Medal of Valor winner twice and had a very, very successful and storied career. And I've been buying dogs in his name, and I also buy dogs in my dad's name, and then I'm going to buy another dog in my mom's name, and I'm going to just continue to perpetually supply these dogs as they retire. We'll come up with another one and another one, and another one, because the dog is a huge asset for the policeman or the sheriff's deputy. He can go in spots that they can't go into, and he can reconnoiter with a lot less risk than them, and he can catch people they can't catch, smell things they can't smell. So it's just a tremendous asset, and we're really proud to be able to help our law enforcement. And we also use our facility here for training for them too. So, yeah, we ride for law enforcement here. We ride for that brand.
Well, man, you got a lot going on. I appreciate you letting me come in here to the headquarters. It's good talking to you. Big fan of the knife. Big fan of everything you guys stand for over here. And it's good for you to. I appreciate you giving me an hour of your day. Because
I so enjoyed myself talking to you today.
I'm sure you're probably going to go in and start kicking someone's ass or training again, or getting back on your machine in there and going crazy.
I got a full day still.
Okay, full day. I'm going to sign off. I'm talking with Lynn Thompson here at the Cold Steel headquarters. They make the strongest, sharpest knives in the world, and that's the bottom line because Lynn Thompson said so. Quality knives. Every man, every woman should have a pocket knife, and that's what I said so. Thank you, Lynn.
You bet.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
Hey, this is Adam Carolla. Let me tell you about my podcast. We do it every single day, so you can subscribe, and there'll always be a fresh one waiting for you. It's about 2 hours of topical topics, and news, and guests, and comedians, and, of course, my own vitriolic take on just about everything that's going on in the world. Plus, we get a lot of really interesting, notable people who come in. We'll get politicians, we'll get tastemakers, we'll get stand-ups, we'll get authors, we'll get pundits. We'll get, I think about covers it all, celebrities as well. And we'll do some really interesting interviews with them. You can get The Adam Carolla Show wherever you download your podcast.